Hello, my name is Debbie Reynolds. This is the Data Diva Talks Privacy podcast, where we discuss data privacy issues around the world with industry leaders to share information that businesses need to know now. Today, my special guest is Rohan Light, who's the CEO of Decisive AI. He is an AI auditor, a data ethicist, Humane Data Framework creator. He works a lot with people to analyze code and work on things like autonomous systems, data ethics, bias, privacy, trust, and cybersecurity. Welcome, Rohan Light. You do a lot of posting and a lot of things about AI, governance strategy, just almost any angle related to data. So I'd love for you to talk about what you do.
Thank you, kia ora. Yes, Rohan Light from New Zealand. It is early in the morning, but there's an advantage to that because we can reach quite a large amount of the world from here. And I think that's the first answer to your question there. Because we are at the bottom of the world, we're a landlocked island. We are, in many ways, the most international of people because we have the furthest to go to reach the major centres, wherever they are. And I think that helps New Zealand. It gives us a chance to look at what's happening with the rest of the world and then figure out how it all connects together without being part of the big political conversations in the field. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I'm a generalist. I've deliberately gone for breadth rather than depth into data world, simply because it's so colossal. And my original professional basis is risk. So in risk, you need to be able to create a coherent frame for many things, most of which will have high levels of uncertainty, simply because we just don't know what's going to bite us. Those three things are largely why I managed to put up a bunch of stuff. How about that?
You're really good. It's like every time I turn around, you have something new, and it's always interesting. So it's never surface, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's very, very targeted to specific things, but I feel like you're definitely elevating the conversation about data and all the different ways the data can impact people, and it's very thought-provoking.
You're too kind. I think here we are clearly at an inflection point in both societal terms, political terms, economic terms, and like it or not, data professionals, we are at the crossroads of much of that. It is our professional role going forward to ask the next question, not the first question, not the easy question, it's the deeper question. And we have to do it in such a way to maintain inclusion. So we can't frame a question in a way that takes people out of the conversation. We have to frame things in. And what that means is we can't shy away from the tricky stuff. Now, I do have a secret advantage. So I have worked in publishing, and one of the things, and specifically in a form of publishing called Partworks, which is 30-page booklets, 30 imprints of these small booklets, and they get pushed out, and they are halfway between a big treatment and a small one. And one of the elements involved in that is to find strong quotes. And when we look at the range and breadth of professionals venturing into data governance, we can, in their work, we can find invariably one or two really strong paragraphs, really strong sentences. And this is where the author has touched on something that resonates and is probably in some way, shape or form slightly dramatic or crazy, or will make some people annoyed or angry. And as you know from Facebook, etc., part of our job is to take the anger out of these conversations. So
Right, exactly. I know I used to toy with microblogging, so it would force me to be able to shorten what I want to say. You have to distill it down to kind of its essence.
yeah,
And I think that's a hard skill to learn, but I did it for a lot of years. So I tried to make things as simple as possible when I'm talking to people, distill it.
yeah.
That's a good segue into metaphors. I know that you think we need better metaphors.
Yep.
Explain that, and I would love to comment on that.
Yeah, sure. Metaphor is crucial. So metaphor and its equally attractive cousin analogy are crucial to our ability to identify what is actually going on. Now, we have seen since 2007, 2008, people figuring out that the data economy was something unique and different, and they were seeking to utilize storytelling techniques. And one of them is metaphor, and we've all heard data is the new oil, which is a common one, right? But when we really go into that and we look at the probably quite destructive nature of oil extraction, pollutants, the way that it sort of locks us into non-sustainable ways of life. And we go, well, actually, we don't want data to do that. Another one that we hear is be data-driven. Mm-hmm. So we just tease that out a bit. Do we mean driven like a chauffeur, or do we mean driven like a herd of cattle? Which would you like? So the metaphor I like the most is water for data. Humans will die 4 to 8 days without water, so we can now look at, well, many of the things we want to create for the world will die unless we feed them really good water, aka data. Now we see this in the AI field. Everyone knows now, not everyone, but many people know that if you want effective AI, you have to have good data, because that's what the thing is trained on, which is, of course, another metaphor. So part of our job, I believe, is to identify these metaphors and, if necessary, tease out the implications behind those metaphors, and where necessary, not to use them.
I totally agree. I feel like we have to make this simple. We have to be able to resonate and be able to communicate this to people at all levels. So for me, I feel like I have to be able to talk to someone who's 80 or someone who's 8 years old. So being able to make it as simple and as plain as possible, and metaphors do help in that regard. My UK and EU friends don't like the data as new oil metaphor, because they feel like it dehumanizes their rights to privacy to something that's a commodity, even though it sort of is. I would say I have a twist on that. I say insight is the new oil. So the data is useless unless you can get insights from it. And the people who benefit the most from data are the ones who can gain insight from it.
Yeah. The thing with data, you've touched on a really interesting point, and it's the different approaches to governance, the overall differences we have in the EU, the citizen-centric. This is generalizations and possibly stereotyping, but for the purposes of conversation, the US, business-centric, China, state-centric.
Right.
One of the things that our job as professionals to do is to work to harmonize those regimes. The thing about data now, there's always two sides to it, at the very least. And data is both something and about something.
Right.
So the instrumental approaches to data look at the data as something, i.e. the commoditization. Now, the about something will be in some way, shape or form attached to a human. So the about something in the case of Facebook, obviously the people are the commodity. It's very personal. In other situations, though, like a data feed coming in off an Internet of Things device might not be about people, but it certainly tells us a lot about the people who built the device in the first place. It tells us a lot about the things that they thought were important. So no matter what the source of the data, we can always find a human attached to it. And as we've seen in COVID, especially in those first few months where journals were having to retract some of their work simply because they hadn't done enough vetting on it, at the core of that was actually realizing that people we're making too broad a statement about something, the human side of data, and there's no easy way through this. And we see this in Privacy Shield, right? How tricky it has been to maintain that transatlantic movement, and we're clearly having to go to a next level in terms of our nation-grade instruments.
I think it's going to be, the tectonic shifts of how governments are using data and how they're trying to make these agreements amongst each other. I think there's going to be friction because the laws aren't as congruent as you would think they'd be. To me, I think there should, for me, I think at an international level, I would love to see some consensus on stuff. Like maybe hacking is bad. Like maybe we can all agree that that's the case, or certain things like that, so that there isn't as much friction between countries when we're trying to come with these agreements. Privacy Shield is all over the place, and it has been for over 20 years. So I think it'll be interesting to see that. I would love to talk with you about the E word, which is ethics. So ethics.
Oh, okay.
Ethics is like almost like a dirty word to people because I feel like people, especially some people in privacy, they're so fixated on the law, I think that there has to be ethics in there. I think ethics sort of bridges the gap between that's what's missing, I think.
Right.
So I would love for you to talk a bit about ethics. This is one of my favorite topics, so I would love to hear you talk about this.
Well, even the most left anarchists have an ethical code. Everyone. So it's not that people are ethicless. It's that our codes of ethics at an individual level or a social or community level, regional, national, they aren't synchronized. And this comes back to the importance of language and metaphor because it's about connecting groups and finding the things they agree on. We're always going to find things we disagree on. That's the nature of humanity. With the thing with ethics, another part of the problem is the universality, the abstractness of it. We can all agree to be ethical. We will all disagree on what the particular elements of ethics are. And this is an important step, as it turns out, because for an ethical code to be applicable, to be applied ethics, we have to be able to get really close to the actual decision problem and weed out the dilemmas. We have to identify what the dilemmas are, which will be a conflict between ethical principles, and we have to find whether or not these are false dilemmas. And the role of law is, law operationalizes ethics. So if we look back at the history of data governance from the mid-70s, where we had the FIPS-based regimes coming out of the States. Then we had in the late 2000s and early 2010s, we had the technocratic response, we can design for this. And now we have this current wave of data and AI ethics coming on. And each time we are sharpening up the question, we are communicating those questions, and as a result of that, over time, we will influence the drafting of law. And it has to be that way. It can't be the other way around. It can't be, here's some law, you must now believe in this because it is law. And yep, that's called authoritarianism and totalitarianism, and thank you very much, but New Zealand does not care one piece for that. Yeah, so the ethical thing is, that the trick is, get out of the clouds, get close to a dilemma, identify the horns of the dilemma, and then think your way through the problem.
Right. I am very happy to see that there are groups coming together creating frameworks that, eventually will inform people as they create laws.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the harm comes before the law, right? So typically something bad has to happen before it actually becomes a law, which is unfortunate. What is it that you would love for kind of businesses to be thinking about regarding data, and like we were talking about, like being data driven or figuring out how to use data? What is something they need to be concerned about as they sort of take this journey?
Yeah, okay. On the one hand, they can safely ignore many of the concepts and precepts that came out of the first wave of big data. A lot of that was BS. It was marketing speak. The second thing I would say to them is, remember, data is a measure of human activity. It's either your customer's activity or your activity. Either way, you already know it. It's just that all this data work is showing people different ways to think about what they do. And here's the third bit. Information hides on the other side of order. What that means is, whenever we're presented with a data description of what we do, we are pushed to ask questions. Once we start asking questions, we can find the information hidden on the other side of order. So it actually comes back to our ability to form questions about the world and about what we do. And that is at the heart of entrepreneurialism, because the root of the word is to move risk around. You move risk around your business, and you do that because you have hopefully asked and answered a whole bunch of questions about what you're doing. Now, to bring that down one step, the thing to ask yourself is, has your business and industry been disrupted? Well, the happy answer to that is yes, because everyone has been.
Right.
So what we're looking at for business is, this is your opportunity to look at yourself, to think about the world that you want to create for the people following after you. It's about applying deeper questions to what you think you already know.
That's excellent. I love that. I think it's too, I agree with you about sort of the big data push, where people were using like business intelligence and they were gathering all this information.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, they couldn't really answer the question that they had. So
Yeah.
they have to sort of, you're right, you have to start with the question first before you start gathering data. Because other than that, you just have a bunch of junk that it doesn't really help you. So I think that's really important.
This is what the social activists are correctly upset about, is they look at the data assets, or probably not assets, probably data resources that organizations have, and they go, well, to what extent is this stuff inherently racist? To what extent has this data been prepared by white people and the data subjects are all black people? If you run your big data machine over that, then you are going to simply reinforce that particular paradigm.
Yes.
Which comes back to, well, if you're asking different questions and you are genuine about answering those questions, guaranteed you will create data.
Absolutely. Well, I would love then to segue into bias. So this is something that you post about a lot.
Yeah.
You always have thought provoking things about bias. Obviously, this is something that concerns me personally.
Yeah.
As I'm working in technology, give me your thoughts about bias in AI and algorithms.
It seems now that the majority of observers recognize that the natural biases of humans moves into data, and then from data moves into the systems we build. The important thing to recognize is that all humans are unique based upon their point of view. So it's their perspective. So it's where they stand and how they look at the world. Now that is a bunch of biases, because our limited range of perception, we're crowding a whole bunch of things out. We're choosing to privilege certain things over other things. So actually it comes down to self-awareness and the degree within which you are willing to say, yeah, actually the majority of our data is racist, so golly gosh, we better do something about it. Or we go, no, it's not racist at all. It was X, Y, and Z controls over 20 years, and both of those positions may be correct. So the first point is self-awareness. What biases do we carry? The second point is I've seen long lists of biases and its cousin, the fallacies. There are some that are universal. Confirmation bias is always top of my list, which is where we unconsciously, or in some cases consciously, grab the data that confirms our view, because at a very deep level, we don't like to be disconfirmed. We don't like to have our views challenged. And that's the big one. And I think when I look at ungoverned and unmitigated big data machines, they're just gigantic confirmation bias creators.
Right.
That's what's driving the algorithmic accountability conversation, because that's why we want to have a look at the code.
Right, absolutely.
We basically want to see to what extent have you really reinforced your worldview. Because if it's wrong, you're in trouble. And if it's wrong and you are following a conventional business model in data governance, you've made it someone else's problem. They're going to pay the price. So all of a sudden, it very quickly comes back to, what does it mean to be human, and what does it mean to be human with each other?
Right. You do a lot of work in looking at codes from AI for bias and different things that would sort of taint the data in some way. So I feel like a lot of this is, someone has an idea, someone thinks they know the answer to the question, and then they build a system that's going to give them the answer they think is right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
We can grow and develop our capacity for being contradicted. However, all of us will stop at a certain point. We'll go, no, I've had enough of that. That's just crazy. And when we do that, what we're actually showing ourselves is the extent within which we can grow our perspective. Remember, data fundamentally feeds science, which is the elimination of answers to questions until only a few answers remain. So with regards to, I'm going to try and come back to your question, the thing I would say is probably establish 1, 2, 3 thresholds. The first threshold is the safe change threshold. This is the change that we're comfortable talking about, because we've probably been talking about it for a couple of years in the context of digital transformation. That's the safe stuff. Then the next ring is this is a bit flaky and a bit weird. Often these ideas are coming through as a result of COVID, not because they're new ideas, but because we haven't seen them before. And grappling with those ideas is our current challenge. Once we break through that middle threshold, we are then able to really look at what's coming. But this is the big stuff. If you're interested in the big stuff, you have to, for instance, form a professional view on quantum computing. If you get into quantum computing, let's just assume that you have to have some degree of understanding of quantum mechanics, because we want to know how this thing works. And once you get into quantum mechanics, then you really see that third threshold, the absolutely howling moonbat crazy threshold of ideas that we actually might have to move on from. So it's these grades of managing our own reaction to being disconfirmed.
I love that. And quantum computing is, that is the next question. That is the next thing, especially I think it's going to have a huge impact on encryption because the machines will be able to do things that now, like right now, I consider encryption like a fire safe, where if it burns a number of hours, it's only safe to a certain point. So because some encryption, it takes a long time to break it, quantum will totally break through that layer where things that you thought would take hundreds of years to decrypt will be able to be decrypted in a number of hours. I would love to get your thoughts about what is it that's happening now that concerns you most in the world related to data?
Well, it's a macrocosm, microcosm thing. We globally, it looks fairly obvious to me, we've lost the ability of the centre to mediate the political and social extremes. Well, the political extremes, and that has now become a social issue. That's the first point. And that's what actually I hope that data professionals can fill. I think we have a role to fill out that middle ground and mediate different views of the world. So that's the first thing. The second thing is there is a heck of a lot of professional change created by the growth of data. And large part of it, what it comes down to essentially is, oh, damn, do I really have to learn again? And the answer is yes. One of the things that really good data science does is it identifies the ways we've been BSing ourselves. And the only way to get past that is to learn your way through it. So I would look at those two things. One, we need to create a mediating centre within politics and society and therefore data. And two, we need to help people re-engage with learning.
I love that. And I think that's true. That's so true, especially in privacy, where you're working with people from all different countries and all over the world and different sort of legal regimes and different cultures. You have to be really sensitive to that. And I feel like people who are really good at privacy, they're really great at being that center person, you know, that mediator, the person that sort of bridges that gap. But I feel like there's so much that's needed in terms of education because these are human problems. So it's not just a, data processor, data controller, data subject, consumer problem. It's a human problem that, it impacts all of us if we don't get this right. If it was the world according to Rohan, if people had to listen to everything that you say, what would be your biggest wish related to privacy? Like if you could have anything, wave your magic wand, what would you want?
My magic wand would be privacy professionals waking up and recognizing two things. The first thing, recognizing the fundamental weaknesses in FIPS-based approaches, and also in this fantasy world, in their dreams, they realized, oh, this is how I can complement and supplement my FIPS-based tool set. How about that?
Very good. Very good. That's excellent. I would love your thoughts on biometrics. To me, it's such a huge thing. It's like the the technology is so far ahead of where we are thinking, where our heads are. And I just want your thoughts on that. I feel like the data sort of run away from us there.
Yeah. If we had secure digital wallets, if we had, safe control, centralized control over our data self, I'd feel a lot more comfortable. But we don't have that. And so therefore, the likelihood of exploitation is high. In our favor, the scientific community that is stewarding genomic research is in many ways setting the scene for how we govern biometrics. On the other side, because many, if not most, jurisdictions have little or no regulations in this space, there's nothing stopping an idiot creating an app and spending a bunch of money with a really cool marketing crew, and voila, you have things like effective computing. Oh my goodness, the computer, looking through the camera on my laptop, the computer says I'm happy today. That is utter tripe. And yet you find it entertained reasonably at quite high levels. And we go, oh my Lord, come on, mate. This is astrology, not astronomy. This is astrology. This is just making stuff up. Stop buying this.
Exactly.
At the moment, yes, it's unbalanced. I really like the work of the Nuffield Council of Bioethics in the UK. Their work is so good. And I'm hoping, this is why I like blockchain. This is why I like distributed ledger technology. That seems to be the way forward to enabling people some degree of control over their biometric self.
Yeah, I think people, blockchain has gotten sort of a bad rap where people, it's interesting technology and they haven't figured out the best ways to really implement it. But to me, I'm seeing a lot of interesting applications of blockchain in the identity space.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's going to get a lot of traction.
Yeah, for sure. The first blockchain wave, 2016, 2015, 2016, it attracted the Magic Bullet crowd. Oh my God, here's a Magic Bullet. And then after a while, when the Magic Bullet crowd encountered the really hard technical element, they fell off and they went to the next thing. So what we're seeing now is a second wave in blockchain and distributed ledger. And yes, those use cases are really starting to sharpen up now. The data collaboratives / data institutions / data trust work coming out of GovLab in the US and the ODI in the UK are really good indicators of how far we have come with the trust-based governance structures that we wrap blockchain technologies around.
Right.
So, and in that sense, that's good because we want to see it. We want to see the stuff blueprinted before we build it. Blockchain is much more than Bitcoin. It's much more than fintech.
Yeah, absolutely.
It goes deep into supply chains. It goes, deep into personal control. And my goodness, if we can get just one step for many people around personal control of data, I hope anyway, it will take a lot of heat out of the system.
I think so too. Right. Exactly. Well, you're always fighting the good fight. I'm really happy about that. Please tell me how people can contact you and how they can follow your work. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
LinkedIn. Just going back to your conversation about microblogging. Yeah, I just treat LinkedIn as my microblog distributor.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The conversation that LinkedIn has managed to curate it's suitable for business. It's suitable for professional conversations where people know that taking strong political and strong social views on LinkedIn, it just stands out. And if it's too hard, if it's too full on, it will make people scared, and you won't generate a conversation. If it's too safe, people will go, oh, look, come on, man. I don't need yet another anodyne or bromide. I don't need more boilerplate stuff. If you can find that middle ground, LinkedIn is a great place to have a conversation, and that's where people should hit me up. Rohan Light.
Rohan Light. I know I was talking with someone and they were talking about, AI and algorithms and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, you have to connect with Rohan. He's the guy, he's the go-to person. It's so funny because I was emailing you about this interview and someone had asked me about that. And I was like, oh, I just talked to him the day before. So yeah, totally connect with him. So I always send people your way when they were talking about ethics, AI, data, because you post some of the most interesting stuff. And I wish I could comment on every single thing because you just have so much stuff that comes out. But I always try to like it, and if I can, I try to comment.
Yeah, it's isn't it great? Seeing when we see the likes emerge on LinkedIn. For me, it's an indication that there's further conversation to happen. And I think that's our task is to find ways to talk a little more deeply about these issues that are affecting everyone.
Well, you are succeeding. You are succeeding, my friend. So
you're too kind.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. This is fantastic. I would love for people to definitely. You have to follow Rohan on LinkedIn. He just has so much good stuff. So very good. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. Kia ora, Debbie. And this has certainly been a great start to my Thursday.
Fantastic. Thank you.